2020. So wonderful to be with you today. The day after Super Tuesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Wow. What a night, what a night, what a night. We've got to talk about this, everybody. So call me at 773 9278. 773 Yep. Even those of you who are up in Wisconsin and all around, call me on that number so that I can hear what you think about the Democratic race for president now. What do you think is next for Joe Biden? What do you think is next for Bernie Sanders? Um, the nomination is not outside of his grasp. It's going to be harder. But now we're also looking at how he has to pivot and how both of them have to pivot. It was very interesting to see the gracious remarks from Vice President Biden. Uh, he has to do that because he cannot win without Sanders supporters. He can't. And Sanders supporters have seen how the Democratic establishment convened to really push him out, and they did do that by taking Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar. Uh, hey, Elizabeth Warren has not endorsed anyone, so it's very interesting watching all of this, and this is a discussion. But the question is, what else? What is going to be on the table in when we get to Milwaukee? I mean, what are we fighting for? Are we fighting for Medicare for all? That's become much more of an issue, Lady B, as we look at the coronavirus and other viruses, other illnesses uh, that really have, that can take us out financially, or that can take our lives. So, got to talk about that. Today, I'm going to look at this stock market. What is going on with the stock market? It is up and down, mostly down, and we need to know what this is really about and what we should do about it. If you have a 401k, you have got to be very, very nervous. But most Americans don't. Most Americans are not in the stock market. So how does this impact us anyway, for those of us who are not in it? I'm going to talk with Dr. Max Wolf, world-renowned economist, about this brilliant economist. And then the hand sanitizers that everybody's using, we've got them. Lady B's wearing her gloves today. I said I want to wear my ring, so no. I just have to wash my hands all the time. But sanitizing your hands is not washing your hands. Really, the best thing to do is to use soap and water. That having been said, most of these sanitizers that we're using now, sanitizers, do not have high-grade alcohol, which is a problem because that means you're not getting disinfected. So is your hand sanitizer working for you? Lisa Song from ProPublica is going to talk with us about it. We're going to have Livonia Perryman from the Superstation up in Detroit, 9:10 a.m. She does an evening show, brilliant journalist. And she was also instrumental in the Jackson campaigns of 84 and 88. So she's been here before. And so we're bringing a lot of people who have been here before. And we're going to have Congressman Ro Khanna. He's going to join us again. Of course, he's the national co-chair of the Sanders for President campaign. We're going to have Jonathan Jackson, national spokesman for Rainbow Push, who is now a Sanders surrogate. Yeah. We've got Frank Watkins, who was one of the architects of the Jackson campaigns. More and more of the Sanders staff and co-chairs and people who work with the campaign, as they talk to Jackson people, they say, wow, what you went through in 84 and 88 is what we're going through right now. Wow. I'm like, oh yeah. So we have to really share these stories so we can figure out how we can move this progressive agenda forward. That's my point. At the end of the day, Mike Espy won last night. He had a big night. He had a huge win. So he's the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Mississippi. Can you believe it? Now, interestingly, remember, he was the Secretary of Agriculture under Bill Clinton, and he's a moderate, everybody. He's African American. It'll be a radical idea to get another black senator out of Mississippi. We had that during Reconstruction. Okay. But so it's important. I think there are a lot of different questions that we're going to have to start asking now, right? Like, because we keep making a lot of presumptions, but I am pulling for Mike Espy. He's a good guy. But when you know where people are politically, then you know where you have to negotiate with them, where you have to push them. And I think that's one of the great lessons of the Obama era, right? We have to figure out, and because President Obama is really a centrist Democrat, that does not make him a bad guy. He's a good guy. But you have to know as a progressive, oh, I'm going to have to push him on this. I'm going to have to push him on that. That's important. And you do it respectfully. That's something else that we can learn from this period too. How to engage in a respectful way. I don't care what other people are doing. Let us be respectful. Okay, everybody, let's get to some of these headlines. Lady B, boy, did we have a night last night. And when I got in, I had to go to Washington yesterday. When I got in, I just had to look at the news. Wow, wow. What did you think? What did you think? Joe Biden had a very, 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 very good night. Very good night. Indeed, we're still waiting on the results in Washington State, but he won convincingly in Michigan. And so, for those of us who are pulling for Bernie Sanders, we're kind of sad, but you got to keep on fighting, everybody. Now, some commentators are calling for Bernie Sanders to leave the race. Do you think that he should? I don't think so. So you let me know, because the fight it's still on. It's still on. All right, so everybody, what do you think? What do you think about these? They called it in The Guardian, the crushing reality of defeat hit the Michigan Sanders campaign staff at a downtown Detroit watch party by 9 p.m. Well, what are the takeaways? We're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about that today, and what is the path forward for the Democrats? What's going to happen? What are the key takeaways? According to The Guardian, Michigan could be a knockout blow for Sanders. The establishment strikes back. They certainly did do that. They got all contenders out of the race. And there's a study that shows that CNN's coverage of Sanders was three times more negative of Sanders than Biden following their primary wins. Isn't that interesting? So, everybody, what do you think what do you think is going to be the stage? What do you think is going to happen going forward? I mean, that's just really it. And the coronavirus is changing the character of the presidential race, because guess what? They did not have campaign rallies last night. Those are being canceled because, because of the race. Because of the coronavirus. It's wow, this is really, really a lot. And there's a question about whether the coronavirus vaccine should be free. What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Should the coronavirus vaccine be free? Now, Deborah Berger, the president of the National Nurses United, huge nurses union, said that the idea that the coronavirus vaccine would not be free is insane and cruel. What do you think? You tell me. Should it be free or not? The NBA, the NHL, and the Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer have banned non-essential personnel from their locker rooms in response to the coronavirus. And, well, this you could almost expect this. Republicans are facing a backlash over racist labeling of the coronavirus. Many people are saying that this is a Chinese problem and that they are giving this to us. And so senior Republican figures are facing backlash over an apparent effort to label COVID-19, the coronavirus, as Chinese coronavirus, as China accused some U.S. politicians of, quote, disrespecting science, close quote, in order to stigmatize their country. They hold a lot of our debt, right? I don't think you really want to insult them. LeBron James has backtracked on comments saying that he would not play at empty arenas. He just might have to. That's right. So, and people are worried about older Americans because they're more vulnerable. Interestingly enough, only one person in the 20 age range has died from this. Under 10, no one. Why children? And thankfully, they are not vulnerable to this virus. But this is going to be very interesting to watch. It's going to be very interesting to watch it all unfold. We're going to be working with Dr. Damon Arnold and get some points of empowerment for you. Things that you should do every day so that you can build up your immune system, so that you can keep your environment clean, and so that you can lessen your chances of contracting the virus. Remember, everybody who contracts the virus doesn't die from it. So let's not walk around panicking and being afraid. The Chicago Bulls won over the Cavaliers 108 to 103. Yay. Lady B, are you jumping up and down?
Yes.
But the Milwaukee Bucks lost to the Denver Nuggets. Wow. Denver Nuggets 109, the Milwaukee Bucks 95. And guess what? Um, it's kind of chilly outside today. I was a
Hmm.
little surprised. I was in Washington yesterday. It was 70 degrees.
Mm.
Washington is really the South, everybody. The Blackhawks will be playing against the San Jose Sharks tonight, and the Dow closed up more than 1,000 points, more than 1,100 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed up 393 points. S&P closed up 135 points. Let's bring on Dr. Max Wolf because I need to know what what we are looking at. Dr. Max Wolf, how are you?
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Always. No, thank you for joining us. What should our read be with this stock market? What are we looking at? In fact, how many Americans, what percentage of Americans are invested? And why should it matter to us?
Sure. So, lot to unpack there. Let's start with lots of Americans have some exposure of a direct variety to the stock market, and all Americans have indirect reason to pay attention. So, how the stock market is doing gives us a little bit of an idea of how big companies in America, mostly those are the public companies that trade on the stock market, how the bigger companies are doing, and also how our wealthier friends are doing. So a lot of people own some stock, about half the country or less owns some direct stock, whether that's in an ETF or a mutual fund or just buying shares of a company. And there are a couple of ways to have exposure directly. But the truth of the stock market is that about 80+% of the stock market is owned by about 10% of the country. So it's a very good indicator of the concentration of wealth or inequality here. And it is a better barometer of how the wealthy are doing in an immediate sense than how everyone is doing. But I'd stop and say that in what they sold us as the service economy, I mean, the real truth is that it's the servant economy. And if you work in the big house and the guy who runs the big house runs it into a wall, you get to clean up even if you didn't get to go to the party. And so we should all pay attention to how the stock market's doing because the lowly other 90% of us do gain our income some way or another or some of our economic opportunity from what goes on with the wealthier. So this is not a promotion of that basic social or economic fact, but doesn't help you overturn a system whether you like it or not to pretend it doesn't exist. So that is the system we live in, and so the stock market matters. And indirectly, we're all exposed to it, right? The brown stuff doesn't roll uphill. It's the way I teach it in my class. It's not particularly elegant, but it does tend to stick in the memory, right? So if the rich get in trouble, they usually do their best to transfer that particular gift down the economic ladder. Because anyone listening that has no dog in the fight, such as it is.
Okay, so the brown stuff doesn't travel up. Thank you, Dr. Wolf. You forget he's also a comedian in his other life. But but thank you because that's sticking with me. Okay, no pun intended. Well, when we see the volatility of the market, for those of us who are not directly invested in it, what should that mean? And is there anything that we can do about it?
Yes, it's a great question. I mean, look, the volatility does strongly indicate that folks don't know where they're going. Might be eerily reminiscent of watching the least scientifically informed leader of anywhere in the world, first, second, or third, try to do baseball cap promotions in the lab while pretending he isn't holding the virus images upside down. But the truth is, this is an important part of the economy since it's something that directly or indirectly affects almost all of us. You do want to pay attention. And what it basically means is that people who figure out how to allocate capital, how to put more money here or less money there, don't know where to put the money. And where they put the money has massive effects on communities. Communities rise and fall, gentrify, or slide into economic ruin. Businesses do well or poorly. And if those businesses that the share speculators are buying and selling happen to be the businesses where you work, and more than half of America works in big companies, then it does affect you pretty fast. So we do have to pay attention. And what's happened in the stock market is, in a strange twist you wouldn't necessarily figure out from the rhetoric, the stock market's been hooked on getting freebies, handouts, and help from the federal government of all types, particularly, but not exclusively, from the Federal Reserve, which does a lot of this to stimulate the overall economy and helps all of us in some ways or another, but has been lowering interest rates. And lower interest rates make it cheaper for companies to borrow money. And one of the things companies have been doing with the money they're borrowing is buying their own stocks. And that's the way they support the stock price that pushes up the stock market. Another thing they've been doing with that cheap money is borrowing cheap and doing what they want to do, buying each other. And when companies are buying each other, and when they're buying stock back from the public, the stock market tends to shoot up. And the president seems to be fixated on the stock market. I'm not 100% sure why, but he does seem to watch it every day, and he seems to believe it is a barometer of his success as a president. So he spent a lot of time talking and targeting the stock market, and what that means is when there's the slightest trouble in the stock market, he responds. Maybe the way you should respond when there's the COVID-19 virus, but he saved a lot of time by doing absolutely nothing on that for months, and he used that time to send tweets battering officials in various agencies of the government to try to make the stock market go up, in part so he can run on that, and in part because I think he does truly believe that the stock market is a great indicator of how Main Street feels economically. For whatever it's worth, he's once again incorrect about that, but it is a relevant feature, and it's right to pay some attention.
Where do we go from here? I mean, because if just to the average person, to the layperson, when we see this, we see them halt trading because the plunge was so profound. It was frightening because because everybody, all the money people looked scared to death. So what does that mean to us as we are trying to prep, buy toilet paper, sardines, and water? Because we're watching a city of 11 million people get shut down. Now we've seen a country go into quarantine, and we're wondering if that's going to happen here. How is the coronavirus impacting all this, and what should we do? Because I'm looking for an empowering message for Americans today.
Yeah, so what happens next is up to us, whether that's the equity market or the coronavirus. And the true test of a community under leadership is how you respond to disasters, setbacks, and crises, not whether or not you have them, right? So the sort of ancient pre-modern saying was, when you have a crisis, when you have a flood, when you have a drought, when you have locusts, it's a disfavor of some sort of deity. Possible, but we less believe that these days. And what really separates success from failure and misery from rebuilding is response, right? So two things are happening. Just like it gets really windy before it goes from hot to cold or cold to hot, right? When things get really turbulent, it usually signals a change of regime, right? Does in the weather, does in the markets. And so things are really windy or volatile right now, and that probably means this long, quasi-irrational up market that got really over its skis, got really out in front of itself, is probably kind of over, and it's going to be harder sledding in the equity markets. Again, not the end of the world, not totally surprising, not unsuspected, easy to respond to if you do it the right way. What we have been doing is having a focus on the stock market instead of the economy, bad idea, and we've been pulling out all the stops to try to force the stock market up, which of course is very popular with political donors because that's also who owns stocks. That is a terrible macroeconomic policy. The other thing is America's had a strong economy and financial markets for a long time because there has been the belief, and there have been other episodes of difficulty, but there has been the belief that the central bank makes the best decisions for the economy outside the interference of politics. And President Trump has been battering, critiquing, ridiculing the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, via Twitter, and it does look like Jerome Powell is giving in to the presidential pressures. That means we'll be less equipped to deal with the coming crisis if it comes, and every other, because we'll have meaningfully weakened that institution. The same way that by weakening Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, we have actually put ourselves in a weaker situation to go through whatever we end up going through here with the coronavirus. So the good news is, because it's the response, not the ailment, you can always change your response. And it is a season of change, and we are about to have an election. Not that you know it, since no one's talking about it, but just to give you guys a hot scoop that you probably wouldn't have gotten elsewhere, we are in the election season, and that does portend at least the possibility of change.
Your closing thought, Dr. Wolf.
Never think that because it's not you, it can't hurt you. Lots of people watched
Mm.
China suffer from COVID and either didn't much care, didn't much get involved, or in some cases, as per your earlier story there, took a certain glee in the misery of someone else, possibly because of the trade negotiations. That's not just a bad idea on a spiritual and moral level, although it is. It's actually a terrible idea on a more practical economic level. There is no Chinese economy and American economy. There is a global economy, like it or not, which means it's your neighbor's house that's on fire and the embers travel, right? So when it comes to panic, which is the thing that drives big sell-offs in the stock market and why the stock market is sensitive to panics around coronavirus, or people locking themselves in their apartment with 50 years worth of sardines and toilet paper. Maybe before you do that, you think about what kind of future that would be for you and your neighbors, and you think if there isn't a better way. So, things we do together are things we tend to do well, and things we do at each other's expense in zero-sum games tend to be as unsuccessful as they are hard-hearted and community eroding.
The brilliant Dr. Max Wolf. I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Good thanks to the audience.
Absolutely cannot wait to have Dr. Max Wolf back. Well, you know what? This is why we want to have some empowering news for you. Really. As we watch the volatility, you know what? Get out and vote. Get out and vote. And also get information because even if you are not directly invested in the stock market, it impacts us all. And you make the brilliant point that just because it's not happening to you right now doesn't mean it cannot happen to you later on. Remember, you know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. Huh, what happened in China is now happening all over the world. And that's the way it works because the world's a circle, everybody. It begins and ends somewhere and it hits everybody in between. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Hey, Milwaukee. Hey, Chicago. Hey, Madison. Talk 101.7 FM, Talk 92.7 FM, and WCPT. Back in just a minute. Show WCPT 820 here in Chicago and in Milwaukee, Talk 1017 FM, and in Madison, Talk 927 FM. You can stream live on those platforms as well. We want to talk with you today as we move into the discussion of Super Tuesday Part 2. Everyone was waiting on Michigan. We're going to have Livonia Perryman on from their superstation up in Detroit, 910 a.m. She's a veteran of the Jackson campaigns, and she's also been a um, very active in the Democratic Party, very highly placed Democratic operative for many, many years. Want to hear from her what happened in Michigan, and what she foresees, and what her listeners are telling her as well. But right now, as we talk about the coronavirus, and then we'll have Ro Khanna, the congressman from California, the national co-chair of the Biden, excuse me, of the Sanders campaign. Ooh, he would go, what are you saying? Going to hear how they're reacting. And of course, Jonathan Jackson, national spokesman for Rainbow Push, who's now out speaking for Bernie Sanders. What do they see? What do they see? But right now, I came across a very interesting headline in ProPublica. You might be buying a hand sanitizer that won't work for you. That's right. Uh, Marshall Allen and Lisa Song write, it's tempting, especially now, to buy one of the many hand sanitizers whose label says, quote, it kills 99.99% of illness-causing germs, close quote. But that does not mean the product will protect you against the novel coronavirus. Did you know that? The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends rubbing on hand sanitizers with at least 60% alcohol. Do you look at the ingredients in these hand sanitizers? Lisa Song says you really need to check that out. Welcome to the show, Lisa Song. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for the information. What is going on? What the what? We're told to buy these hand sanitizers, and then I find some of them, they're alcohol free. I'm not looking for that. Explain, please.
Right. I think the bottom line here is that the best thing you can do to keep your hands clean is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. But the CDC recommends that if you cannot wash your hands, then the best alternative is to use a hand sanitizer and make sure that hand sanitizer has alcohol as the active ingredient, and that the alcohol should be at least 60%. And you can find out if that's the case by looking at the back of the hand sanitizer bottle. There will usually be a label that says what the active ingredient is, and you want to make sure that active ingredient says something like ethyl alcohol or isopropyl alcohol, as long as they make it clear it's alcohol. Now, if you cannot get a hand sanitizer that's alcohol-based, then the third best choice is a non-alcohol hand sanitizer. And what we know is that some of these alternative hand sanitizers, they're better than nothing, but we don't know as much about them. There's not been as much research, so the CDC is not actively recommending them. And so one of these non-alcohol-based hand sanitizers, the active ingredient is something called benzalkonium chloride. And what became clear as we were reporting the story is that a lot of consumers don't know the difference between different types of hand sanitizers, and they don't know to check the label. So we wanted to make sure people are starting to do that.
Well, what you pulled out in this article is that alcohol-free hand sanitizers, everybody's buying them. You go on Amazon now because that's where you might find a depressed inventory in a store, but you can always find it on Amazon, interestingly enough. And we're seeing price gouging, but we're also we're seeing them sell the hand sanitizers that are not recommended by the CDC. Please explain.
Right. I think everyone is just rushing to get as much hand sanitizer as they can. Like you said, stores are selling out, and people just want whatever they can get. So, we are just seeing this enormous demand for any kind of hand sanitizer, and that's why there's been price gouging everywhere. I should also make it clear that there are many different types of non-alcohol-free hand sanitizers. Mm-hmm. So benzalkonium chloride is not the only active ingredient that you may find. There are some based on other ingredients which we did not write about. Really, the bottom line here is alcohol-based sanitizers are the best alternative if you can't wash your hands. And if you don't even have that, then some other kind of hand sanitizer may be better than nothing. But really, keep in mind that if you have the choice, either wash your hands or get the alcohol-based ones.
Well, this price gouging is really astonishing. What, 6 fluid ounces of Purell, $55, 6 ounces? I'm, what is going on here?
I think it is people who have gotten their hands on some inventory are taking advantage of the panic and demand from other consumers and selling them for really outrageous prices. When we were reporting this, we found, I think the worst example we found was something going up from something like $11 before coronavirus to $200 on Amazon. And we should note that Amazon and eBay say their official policy is to crack down on price gouging, but it's unclear if they're able to do that as quickly as these items are starting to show up online.
What about these homemade hand sanitizers? We're seeing them all over the place. I saw one and I got very excited. The aloe vera gel, you know, 1/3 aloe vera gel, 2/3 high grade alcohol. What are we to make of those?
So I think it is possible to make your own hand sanitizer. You just have to be careful that the final mix is at least 60% alcohol. And there are so many recipes out there from people are posting on blogs, on Pinterest, news articles, and every one of them is slightly different. And I cannot tell you which ones actually end up with at least 60% alcohol. But we do link to, in our story, a PDF instruction from the World Health Organization. And so I would trust that recipe. That is one that we know is recommended. And that particular recipe is calling for really high grade. I think it's alcohol that has at least 90%, 90% alcohol. So that is the one recipe that I can recommend if you're able to follow it.
Well, Lisa Song, I can't wait to have you back on the show because we're getting so much information. It's hard to discern the information from the misinformation, and everyone's panicking. What's your final thought?
I really think that it's panic doesn't help, and caution does. So I think, again, just being really careful to wash your hands, don't touch your face, and if you can't wash your hands, use the right type of hand sanitizer. And this is really about, if you can work from home, try to work from home. It's about trying to decrease the risk for everyone in your community. And I think people are finally starting to get it. We're seeing a lot of canceled events across the nation, discouraging of people to get together in large events. And this is all being done to try and reduce the speed at which this coronavirus is being spread. And I think as much as you can do that, then the better it will be for you and everyone in your community.
Everybody, Lisa Song from ProPublica. She's doing great work for us. I've already posted it, and we're going to repost it on WCPT820.com. You might be buying a hand sanitizer that won't work for you. It's from ProPublica. You need to know what we are using because we are doing a lot of panic buying, and we don't need to panic. Mm-hmm. We need to go from pain to power. We don't need to be fearful, everybody. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, not doctor, but thank you, Lisa Song. She wanted to be very, very clear. I am not a doctor. Mm-hmm. She does have a science background, and she's done some great work for us. Thank you so much. Call me at 773-763-WCPT. What do you think about that story? Have you started buying all of this hand sanitizer? Are you watching the prices rise? Because in her article, she had Germex and Purell. We have Purell in here.
Mm-hmm.
That's not as effective. And you know what? When you go and wash your hands, you see the dirt come off of your hands. So
Yeah.
really go wash your hands. And I just brought in today some shea butter because the lotion is not working for me. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, I shook my mother's, I touched my mother, didn't shake her hand. She said, "Oh, what's going on with you? Your hands feel terrible." Thank you, Mom. And she was right. She's right. I mean, I, you know, I, I just needed to use something heavier. Really,
Mm-hmm.
my hands do get dry in the winter time. So in the winter months. So everybody, thank you so much for that information. What do you think about last night? What do you think about last night? Now, of course, a couple of weeks ago, people were euphoric because it looked like Bernie Sanders, well, those who are progressive, some people were euphoric, some people were hysterical with fear. The Democratic establishment said, oh, the world's going to come to an end if this man becomes the Democratic nominee. Uh, Young people and others felt very hopeful. And so it's all flipped, and people are trying to figure out where to go from here. After uh, we have been watching the results of these last few contests, Super Tuesday 1 and Super Tuesday 2. And I wanted to bring on a brilliant activist and someone who has been really an icon in media. She has heard the Livonia Perryman show on 9:10 a.m., which is the superstation in Detroit. Superstations cover like a fourth of the country. So she talks to us from 7 to 9 every night, Eastern Standard Time, so from 6 to 8. And so I want to hear from her. She's someone who has worked with uh, President Obama. She's worked with Reverend Jackson. She's worked with President Clinton as a communication specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know, what did she think of last night as we see this report that um, CNN covered Bernie Sanders 3 times more negatively than Biden. And a lot of people are feeling some kind of way about this. Before I bring up Livonia Perryman, let me bring on Renee. You called real early, Renee. What's on your mind, Renee? I have to catch you before you go to work.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. Am I still on speakerphone? Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. What's going on, Renee? Wonderful hearing your voice.
Okay. Oh, it's nice to be on with you, Santita. I'm a bit depressed. I know we shouldn't be depressed over stuff like this, but I'm still feeling depressed because I'm looking at them stack the deck against not just Senator Sanders, but I think against the American people, because his agenda was really to help the American people. I know it would have helped my family. I told you about my granddaughter who needs medical care for the rest of her life to sustain her life and to have a life that's worth living as far as health-wise. And all these people, other people with health issues or potential health issues, student loans, and all that stuff. He would have helped us. And I'm depressed that the Democratic Party and the corporate media ganged up against the people to support Biden, who even Cory Booker said had cognitive issues right now. It's clear to see something's going on with Biden. So is it that the Democrats just want a figurehead in the White House so that they can really show that they're controlling things and that they're just letting the people know that it's not about the people? That's a bit depressing. I know we will survive that. We've survived a lot, but on the other hand, a lot of people have perished from, bad decisions and bad governing. We've had genocide committed against people. I'm depressed a little bit because I see that Biden is, they're talking about some of his potential cabinet members, Bloomberg, Jamie Dimon. They're just flaunting in our faces now that they're just going to carry on with helping the rich get richer and not caring about the poor. I'm depressed a little bit because Black people flock to Biden without him offering us anything for our votes. And it makes me feel a little bit angry too, because we're supposed to be informed before we vote. We should know what we're voting for, who we're voting for, what they're going to give us before we give up our precious vote and so many people just blindly followed. You wouldn't believe how many people don't watch the debate. You wouldn't believe how many people don't know anything about the records of any of the candidates running, but they're allowed to vote, and I want everybody to vote, but please be informed when you vote because it's so serious. It is life changing. The person who is in charge of all the services that affect our everyday lives. I have water running right now, and that water is controlled by the people that we elect to be in charge of our government. Everything we do, everything is related to somebody that we elect, and we should take it more seriously. So I'm a bit depressed, but life goes on.
Well, may I give you this, Renee? Renee, let me share this with you because we haven't. I don't know if you've done early voting here in Illinois, but and everyone go to 1-866-OUR-VOTE to make sure that you are still registered to vote because they have purged more than 34 million voters from the voter rolls between 2014 and 2018. The race is not over. See, we were in this position in 1988 in particular when Reverend Jackson was running. See, now you've got a platform fight. So I don't want you to be depressed, and I want you to get people out to vote. The mainstream media is giving you the impression that this is over. There were some pundits who were even suggesting that Bernie Sanders needs to come out. I said, wait a minute, it's not over yet. He does not have 1,991 delegates. What are you talking about? And fall behind. Well, who does that? That's not democratic. So stay right there, Renee, because I want to bring up Lavonia Perryman. This is why I wanted to bring her up alone, because she is up in Detroit and she has been working with everybody. And whether whoever you support, Lavonia Perryman, what is our takeaway from last night? And you hear Renee that she's down today, and you have a significant chunk of Democrats or people who will be voting Democratic who now feel who who are feeling dispirited. What do you say to them? And welcome to the show, this great icon, one of my great mentors in all of media. She also should have been a model too, but there you go. Okay.
All right. I'm just so pleased to be able to share my observations and to discuss this with not only you, Santina, but with other folk across the country because I know I feel and I hear the pain in the sister's heart and soul, and that's happening here, and it's happening all over the country. At the end of the day, I had opportunity to speak with Congressman Clyburn yesterday, and I asked him why Biden, and he said to me, frankly, because we need to win, because regardless of whoever is between Biden and Sanders, if Trump is back in office, our lives will be worse than we've ever experienced before. So his position was that we should look at who can win the race at the end of the day and trust in him and trust in Biden that some of the policies and the issues that we're talking about this morning will be addressed under his leadership. And so what I'm also hearing on the ground is that there's great disappointment, not just in Chicago, not just in Detroit, but all over the country. And somewhere along the line, the Democratic Party must come together, have a discussion, have a dialogue with folks to bring everybody under this, what they would say, this tent that we keep saying that we have in the Democratic Party. There are people who would feel like they're floating and not part of the involved in the discussion. I, as you probably figured out, and you guys are listening to me this morning, know that there were candidates that were identified for us. We did not select these candidates. They decided to step forward. We ended up with Biden and Sanders. Why? Because the party and the process, not the party, the process dictated how this outcome would be. The process was determined 4 years ago, 16 years ago within the Democratic Party as they would go through the Democratic Convention or the Delegation Convention and determine the rules and regulations. That's where we as progressives, as black people, as females, that's where we need to really express our power. By the time we get to a primary, like we did yesterday, the process has already been set in place. So we're only responding. We're voting on a process that we had nothing to do with. We had no say so.
But I think that's what Renee is talking about because you feel like Livonia, speaking with Livonia Perryman and call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. She hosts the Livonia Perryman show on 910 a.m. up in Detroit. In fact, it's one of the most widely listened to radio shows in the country. It's on the superstation up there. And so I said, wait a minute, I've got to talk with her. She spoke with Senator Sanders. She's spoken with Jim Clyburn, the majority whip in the United States House of Representatives. She spoke with them yesterday. And so what we're hearing, though, the only way you can win is when everybody's considered, Miss Livonia. And and that's not what people are feeling because Joe Biden doesn't have 1,991 delegates. And so for pundits who many people don't know, you and I know it, many of the pundits on TV work for candidate A or they're Democratic pundits. They work for the DNC in some way or another. They're either working with the DNC or some DNC business organization. I mean, calling for Sanders to drop out? Whoa, what is that?
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because the congressman that we love, Congressman Clyburn, he is also calling for that move. I talked to Leah Dalton, who headed up the DNC convention in 2015, and the party is calling for unity. Now they call it unity. There are people like others will say they're calling for Sanders to drop out, which is not democratic and not fair. So the dilemma is how do we, as a party, how does the Democratic Party look and feel that they're inclusive at the same time get ready for the biggest battle in the 21st century? How do you do that? And that's the question. The question is how do we make sure that Jane and Sister Susie and my mother, your mother, all of us are part of the discussion at the same time looking at taking back the White House, the Senate, and maintaining the House.
But you know what? They're already behind. But Livonia, they're already behind. You know what they've done? When you see President Trump doing these rallies, he's also registering voters. I'm not hearing any of these Democrats talk about registering voters. Whenever I see Bernie Sanders somewhere, he's pulling 5, 10, 15, 20 plus thousand people. Now, whatever you feel about Biden, whether you like him or not, he doesn't generate that same kind of excitement. And I don't see voter registration tables. I don't see the Democrats registering people to vote on Reverend Jesse Jackson's watch, which lasted, for more than a generation. He was always registering people to vote. I don't see them doing that. I've got a couple of minutes before we go to break.
And you're absolutely right. I was at many of the Sanders rallies throughout the week. And there was thousands, several thousands, and people were registered, and they were young folks. But when I looked at the numbers last night, when we look at the numbers in terms of people who were voting, the same people who were registered who might be under 30 vote.
But what happened? That just seems odd to me because when Reverend registered people to vote, they came out and voted. So there's something that's not happening. I don't know what it is.
There is a void there. How do we connect the dots between the people that being registered who are part of a movement? Remember, Sanders' campaign is a movement. Mm-hmm. That is what he defined it as. It looks like that. It feels like that. But when the rubber meets the road, when it comes down to actually dropping in your vote, they are not there. The numbers speak to it. They're not there.
We're going to stay right there. We're going to talk with you. I'm going to bring on your old friend, Reverend Frank Watkins, and someone else you've mentored, Jonathan Jackson. I'm going to bring him on. Oh, yeah, we got to talk about it. I said, look, she's in Detroit. So let us find out from Livonia Perryman. Everybody, you need to support her. She's fabulous. What's the name of your book, very quickly, before I go to break?
Courageous Women, and it's on. It was number one on Amazon. You can pick it up Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And if you'd like for me to come out and do a book signing, I'm available. But I really want us to make sure that we are part of the discussion from the beginning. And that's the dilemma that we face that they're talking about. By the time we get to a primary, Santita,
Hmm.
we are just voting and responding to a decision or decisions that have been made. That really is the problem.
Stay right there. We're talking with Livonia Perryman. We're going to have a roundtable discussion, and we want you to be around the table and in the discussion as we talk about what happened on Super Tuesday. Mike Espy, Mike Espy, he won yesterday. So we're not just voting for president, everybody. We're voting down ballot. You could have another African American who's a moderate, but he's someone you can reason with. He could be going to Washington. Back in just a minute. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you on Talk 1017 FM in Milwaukee, Talk 927 FM in Madison, and WCPT 820 here in Chicago. And call us at 773 763 WCPT 773 763 9278. Let's talk about Super Tuesday Part 2. What do you think about what happened yesterday? We've got a tremendous panel who are going to help us to see our way clearly around all of this. And at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have Congressman Ro Khanna from California, the Silicon Valley Congressman, everybody calls him, because he is the national co-chair of Sanders for President. We want to know where the Sanders candidacy goes from here. Everybody, it takes 1,991 delegates to win. Nobody's close to that yet. Nobody. So when pundits say that Vice President Biden should stay in the race and Senator Sanders should get out, upon what basis are you making that call? What do you? It's time for unity. No, it's time for people to run. You unified a convention, con, come together, right, with each other. So everybody, we also had a very interesting night last night on Super Tuesday Part 2 because, hey, Vice President Biden did quite well. Lady B, let's get to some of these headlines because, according to CNBC, Joe Biden took a big step closer to the Democratic nomination with the Michigan primary victory. Joe Biden has won the Michigan primary, according to all news projections, and they have just about counted every vote. Some people called it a crushing blow to his last serious presidential rival, Bernie Sanders. Was it, everybody? Call me at 773 763 9278, 773 763 WCPT. He also won in Mississippi, but guess who else won in Mississippi, Lady B? Mike Espy. He's a Democratic nominee. So we'll see how this race is how it's gonna move forward. He is, of course, the former Department of Agriculture Secretary under President Clinton, and he's from one of the most prominent families, one of the most prominent African American families in Mississippi. They have been morticians. They're like the Leaks here in Chicago, right? Um, that's right. Very, very prominent, wonderful family, and he could be on his way to Washington, everybody. The presidential delegates race is underway. What do you think is going to happen here? For everybody, what do you think is going to happen? Of course, Biden is in the lead, but he has more than 700 votes, 700 delegates, and um, Sanders has more than 500. It's not over yet, everybody. But they did cancel, Sanders and Biden did cancel their primary night rallies over the coronavirus concerns. Now, when when Senator Sanders was here this weekend, his rally was outside in Grant Park. I thought that was smart. And it was a beautiful day, too. Like he was blessed to have it like that. As the Dow has been dropping, we had Dr. Max Wolf on in the last hour to let us know that we should not panic, but we should be aware of what all of this means. What impact one impacts everybody else. We watched the coronavirus develop over in China, and he said, look, now you see it spread all over the world because there's nothing, no one and nothing lives or is in isolation anymore in this world. There's a woman here in Chicago who tested positive for the coronavirus after traveling from Chicago to St. Louis by Amtrak. The U.S. The National Nurses United, which is the largest nurses union in the United States, they said it is insane and cruel. What are they talking about? The idea that the coronavirus vaccine would not be free. Can you believe that anyone would even think about not having this um, this vaccine be free? She was speaking at a coronavirus roundtable in Detroit on Monday alongside Senator Bernie Sanders and public health experts, and Deborah Berger, who is also a registered nurse, forcefully shot down a question on how the United States could afford to make any COVID-19, that is coronavirus, vaccine free for everyone in the country, noting that no one asks that question of other vaccines or America's endless wars overseas. Good for her. Well, Republicans are facing backlash over racist labeling of the coronavirus. Senior Republican figures, according to this Guardian report, are facing backlash over an apparent effort to label the coronavirus as the Chinese coronavirus, as China accused U.S. politicians, quote, of disrespecting science, close quote, in order to, quote, stigmatize China. Wow. Secretary of State Pompeo called the virus the Wuhan coronavirus. Oh boy, they're swinging for the fences. And Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, called it the Chinese coronavirus. They really need to stop that. They really do. In the meantime, we are seeing more and more sporting events being held without an audience. LeBron James pushed back against that initially, but now he's having to backtrack. He said that a few days ago, that he would not play at empty arenas. Well, he said, we play games without the fans. Now that's impossible. It won't be me, but he is saying that some of his views have changed. The 16-time All-Star said his views, well, he said, quote, the NBA is saying no one can actually come to the game if they've decided to get to that point, so I'd be disappointed in that. But at the same time, you got to listen to the people that are keeping track of what's going on. And if they feel like that's what's best for the safety of the players, for the safety of the franchise, the safety of the league to mandate that, then we will all listen to it. Everybody. Did you know that CNN's coverage of Senator Sanders was 3 times more negative than Biden following their primary wins? Did you know that? Yes, you should know. So everybody, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Dow was up more than 1,100 points yesterday. The Nasdaq was up 393 points. The S&P was up 135 points. The Bucks lost to the Denver Nuggets. Wow, 109 to 95. Denver Nuggets 109. The Bucks 95, and well, the Chicago Bulls, they were triumphant over the Cavaliers, 108 to 103. Today in Chicago, we're expecting a high of 43 degrees. Milwaukee, a high of 45 degrees. In Madison, a high of 49 degrees. Everybody. And the Blackhawks will be playing against the San Jose Sharks tonight. Everybody, talk to me. Wow, so many of you do want to talk to us, but I'm going to bring in this panel. We've been speaking with Lavonia Perryman, the the host of the Lavonia Perryman Show, 9:10 a.m. up in Detroit. It's one of the superstations. Superstations in the United States they cover about a fourth or a third of the country. So she speaks to a lot of people every night from 7 to 9 Eastern Time. We're so honored to have her, and she's being joined by some of her dearest friends, Reverend Frank Watkins, one of the architects of Reverend Jackson's 84 and 88 campaigns, one of his senior advisors for more than 50 years. Jonathan Jackson. Wow, I think I know this guy. He's the national spokesman for Rainbow Push, and he's also a Sanders surrogate. I think I know him. He's my brother. And then Trevor Gervais from We Build, We Build political consultants. And so let me start with you, Reverend Frank Watkins. What is our takeaway from last night?
Well, our takeaway is that we lost by apparently, we lost four, and maybe when all the votes are counted, we will have lost, five or maybe even all six of the races yesterday. But as you indicated, the number you need to look at is the 1,991 delegates that you need at the conventions, and I think the attitude of most people, at least at this point, who are Bernie supporters, are onward Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and other supporters. Soldiers. Bernie has said he will be at the debate in Arizona on Sunday. There will be 4 races following that on Tuesday in Illinois, Ohio, Florida, and Arizona. And we'll see what that outcome is, and then we'll have to make, judgments after that. Political campaigns are organic, and you have to make judgments after each election in the process. And if it becomes even more clear that Bernie Sanders does have the path, that Joe Biden does have the path to the nomination, then candidates have to figure out how to gracefully allow their strongest supporters to, join in and defeat Donald Trump on November 3rd, because he is a danger. It's becoming clearer every day. He is a danger to all of us and literally to the world.
Hmm. Jonathan Jackson, what say you?
Well, I would say that I'm very proud of Mr. Sanders. I'm in Cleveland right now, and no sooner than I was getting on the board the flight to come over here, that when they closed the door, I got a text that said the rally had been canceled. So I ended up flying over anyway and spending the evening with Miss Turner and some staff and other people, which brings up the issue in the last 5 flights that I've taken over the last 4 days. 50% of them have been half empty. I'm seeing empty hotel spaces, empty um, places in the airport, which brings up a very key issue that Mr. Sanders is very vocal on: health care. Call it what you want, Medicare for all, call it anything, but it's a national security issue and it's crippling the economy. That you're seeing the plummet in cruise stocks, the plummet in aviation stocks, and the president is now directly getting involved in trying to manipulate the market through payroll tax cuts. Um, People are agreeing that the number one issue is health care that should be addressed, and they also have, even more important than that, is defeating Donald Trump. I think it was going to be a challenge from the outset to explain to people what is socialism and what is social democracy. And in a nutshell, the government does not own any of the assets, but it's expanding the social contract. If we have a contract to let children go to school K through 12, why can't we expand that now K through 16? If we have social contracts to have the teachers unionize, that's social democracy. For police and fire and union workers, those are social contracts. As we've seen, $6 trillion of value erased from the market the because of this health scare and this health concern. It's also exposing we don't have the infrastructure in place to take care of our citizens, and I think that should come to the forefront. There's a debate coming up this week, and it's very curious that the DNC keeps changing rules. Now, out of consideration and honoring Mr. Biden's request, it's going to be a sit down debate format as opposed to the regular standing. Why? I don't know, but that's something that he had requested. It's going to be a debate format with no audience out of public health concerns. Um, but we are now better than just over a third of the delegates. We still have more contests to go. I think people should be encouraging the candidates to go to every state, debate in every corner of the nation, and to meet as many voters as they can, and be leading a massive voter registration drive. What's concerning me at this point, and even asking for Mr. Sanders by Mr. Clyburn to step out, who's going to register people to vote? Who's bringing in people into the party? I think if they close this drawbridge too soon, it's not going to bode well for the Democrats. Mr. Trump never stopped campaigning since he won. A week later, he was back on the campaign trail. We keep talking about what the Democrats are doing on this primary bid. We're not talking about what the Republicans are doing. They're out registering people to vote, and they have machinery in place for voter suppression. And I don't hear the Democrats fighting back on those two issues. So I encourage Senator Sanders to run on, keep expanding the party, keep reaching out to young people to come in, and on Monday they will vote.
Well, Frank Watkins, before I go to Trevor and to Livonia Perryman, who we just spoke to in the last hour, I feel like I'm going back in time, Frank Watkins. feel like this is like the Jackson 84 and 88 campaigns again. It seems like these are the same or the same issues that we were dealing with then. They were, the Democratic establishment called for unity, and Reverend Jackson needs to step back. I'm like, we're not even halfway through the contest yet.
Yes, that's absolutely the case. After Bernie Sanders won the most popular votes in Iowa, won both the most popular votes and the delegates in New Hampshire. The same thing in Nevada. It reminded me of the panic that set in after Reverend Jackson won Michigan 2-1. The party had a nervous breakdown. They convened a meeting in Washington and had Clark Clifford convened a meeting and invited Reverend Jackson in to try to calm down the fears of the party. And that's actually what happened. And then they, of course, following that, he went to Wisconsin, and there were 40,000 people on a hillside, and they were in absolute panic. So something similar happens after Bernie won the first three, races. It looked like he was going to be a nominee. It looked like Biden was sinking. He finished, a distant fourth and fifth in New Hampshire and in Iowa and New Hampshire, and a distant second in Nevada. And the party was kind of panicky. And then he did fairly well in the Tuesday debate in South Carolina, and Wednesday morning, Clyburn endorsed him in a very emotional way, bringing his deceased wife into the picture, talking about, she just loved Joe Biden and so forth and so on. And Joe Biden, we know who Joe Biden is, doing the twist on the FDR story about the young man who was on the side of the train tracks when FDR's train. Did you know FDR? No, I didn't know FDR, but FDR knew me. And so he did a little twist on that, talking about, we know who Joe Biden is, but more importantly, Joe Biden knows who we are. And everyone anticipated Biden winning in South Carolina, but no one anticipated his winning by 28 percentage points. So the party saw that and flocked to his campaign. So Joe Biden's rally did not come from Joe Biden. It came from Bernie Sanders. The party was trying to stop Sanders from gaining the nomination, and so they circled around immediately. They saw an opening and went in and grabbed Joe Biden and propped him up, and the rest is kind of history. But the race is getting more complicated in the sense that Bernie Sanders' strength is his ability to draw these huge crowds and to inspire people and bring enthusiasm to the campaign. Well, if the coronavirus is going to prohibit candidates from having such rallies, then this is, a blow to one of Bernie Sanders' strengths. It's interesting that the president has said he's going to go on with his rally, so he's going to ignore what the scientists and the medical people say, and just go right on with his rallies. Apparently, they've had to clean the Air Force One because one of the persons who wore the mask, Matt, what's his name, from Florida?
Oh, Matt Gates. Matt Getz. Yes.
Was exposed at the C-SPAN conference, as were 3 or 4 or 5 other members of Congress who have now gone into hibernations, and the president's shown in a picture shaking hands with Congressman Collins from Georgia, who is self um, has isolated himself, but the president won't even do a test. When it comes to testing, the United States has tested apparently a total of about 5,000 people, and China is testing 200,000 people per day, 5,000 total. China's testing 200,000 a day. South Korea is testing 15,000 a day. And that's how they're finding out where it is and therefore how to take actions. In this country, we have no idea where it is, how many, and we're probably on the verge of an explosion in the next couple of weeks of finding out how many people are actually, infected with the coronavirus.
Never heard of anything so awful in all of my born days. We got Congressman Ro Khanna coming up, national co-chair of the Bernie Sanders for President campaign. Want his reaction to last night's races and where they go from here. Trevor Gervais. Trevor is a millennial, so I want to hear from him because this is you are really emblematic representative of the people who are coming out and voting for Senator Sanders. The strength of his support is coming from young people, young African Americans and young white Americans and young Latinos. Young people want him. I'm wondering what's happening though with the vote. Got a lot to talk about. And Jonathan Jackson, I'm so glad that you're here with us today, and Lavonia Perryman and Frank Watkins. Got a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. This is, ooh, everybody get out and vote. Get out and vote. That's all you need to do. Get out and vote. The race is not over. Not by a long shot. Didn't know, Jonathan Jackson, that they had changed the rules for the debate, which will favor Vice President Biden. No question about it. So it's going to be a conversation, not a debate. What's up with that? Call me at 773-763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. Milwaukee Talk 101.7 FM. Madison Talk 927 FM. Back on WCPT in just a minute. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Talk 1017 FM in Milwaukee, Talk 927 FM in Madison, and WCPT 820 here in Chicago and all around the country. We are talking on the Santita Jackson Show about last night's results, Super Tuesday Part 2. Super Tuesday Part 2, 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Got a tremendous panel of guests. Lavonia Perryman, my sister on the radio, my mentor in media. Indeed, she's been a communications specialist for President Obama, for President Clinton, for Reverend Jesse Jackson, for so many people. 9:10 a.m. on the Superstation up in Detroit. And we've got Trevor Gervais, our millennial in residence. Jonathan Jackson, national spokesman for Rainbow Push, and Reverend Frank Watkins, senior advisor to the Jackson campaigns of 84 and 88. And we are joined by Congressman Ro Khanna, our personal favorite, here on the Santita Jackson Show, Silicon Valley. I think we have to claim him here in Chicago and in Milwaukee and Madison as well. Congressman Khanna, national co-chair for Sanders for President. How are you today?
Good morning, Santita. Great to be back on.
Well, tell me, what about last night? What is your reaction? I mean, we're hearing someone who's even as esteemed as Jim Clyburn, who's saying, you know what, we need to shut this down. Bernie Sanders needs to stop running. We need to have unity. What say you?
Well, that would be a mistake, and not because of Bernie Sanders, but the millions of working people who have supported him. I mean, how could he let them down by throwing in the towel before even half the delegates have been counted? So he is committed to going to the debate and laying out his vision on the issues that he's fighting for, which are never more relevant than now with the coronavirus. I mean, he's been talking about making sure people can get health care without having to pay exorbitant fees, that kids with student loans, young people, don't default on them, that with the economy as shaky as it is, folks can earn a living wage. So he will continue, and he will be at the debate.
Well, Congressman, there seems to be a disconnect. Senator Sanders was in Chicago this past weekend, and he had 15,000 plus out in Grant Park if he had one person. And we see these crowds, these surging crowds that just continue. I mean, thousands upon thousands come out to see him. And we're seeing what happened in Michigan, according to the numbers that we have seen. The young people there was a split in the vote. What's happening? What is going on as you see it?
Well, I mean, I think he's winning overwhelmingly the young folks, as I've seen the exit polls, but he's not doing as well the suburban communities. And I think what is driving the election is the sense of quote-unquote electability. So when you had bombardment on CNN, on MSNBC, and all the networks saying Joe Biden is the most electable, and when you had person after person, pundit after pundit come on and say Bernie Sanders isn't electable, I disagree with that analysis. We have quote-unquote gone with the most electable candidate before, whether that was Marndale or John Kerry, or they don't turn out to be the most electable. But I think that's what's driving it. I think people are saying we want to beat Donald Trump, and all of the messages they're hearing is that Joe Biden is more electable. Jake Tapper, actually, on CNN, made a good point last night. He said that he was trying to keep the people close to the George W. Bush campaign, and they said they were much more afraid of Howard Dean than John Kerry. So sometimes this electability argument can be misleading.
It's very interesting. Howard Dean and Bernie Sanders, these persons, and I would even say Jesse Jackson in the 80s, Reverend Frank Watkins and Jonathan Jackson and Lavonia Perryman. These are the people who excite the party. And yet the party is not excited by them. Congressman Khanna, and then I'm gonna I open it up to the floor.
Well, Cynthia, one of the points. Cynthia, I'd like to make one of the point on this. Some of these numbers I can't quite wrap my arms around because they're coming so fast. Election after election, and all the thumb on the scale. I respect and appreciate Mr. Andrew Yang, but how can you be a paid commentator making an endorsement for another candidate and you're not having Sanders representatives on there at the same time? So to Mr. Connor's point, he keeps saying this pair of mutual betting is a psychology on you can't win, you can't win. Before you know it, you hear it 1,000 times. People believe that you can't win, which is unfortunate. You see with your own eyes, the gentleman, Mr. Sanders, is touching tens of thousands of people at a time. There's also something that you have to look at a little carefully, and Frank brought it up regarding South Carolina. In 2016, Mrs. Clinton received 272,000 votes in South Carolina. Mr. Sanders received 96,000 votes in South Carolina. Call that 368,000 votes. But an X factor is this year, President Trump went down to South Carolina towards the primary time, and that's when he made that comment. Oh, I like crazy Bernie, yada yada, during this little poll. Nothing this man does is like accidental in that regard. He's very scientific and precise on his strategy on this campaigning. And he told people in Republican members to go to the polls. This year, I've not heard anybody mention that there were 538,000 votes cast for Democrats in South Carolina, up from 368,000. They keep asking, where is Bernie's support? Bernie went from 96,000 to 106,000. Joe, let's say, had 261,000. Where did those other 150,000 votes come from? Republicans in these open primary states are allowed to vote for Democrats. And I think when we finally able to slow the train down and see it, many of them are helping pick the Democratic nominee.
Well, I mean, but don't you think that while this train is on the tracks, that I've not heard that kind of analysis, Jonathan Jackson, Congressman Connor, and Frank Watkins and Lavonia Perryman.
There's open primary in Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Illinois, Michigan. Republicans can join any of those races. But look at where Senator Sanders won. Nevada, that's a closed primary. Iowa, that's a closed primary. Only Democrats can vote. So I'll do my own analysis my way, but that is a peculiar rule to me. And then how the Democrats keep changing the rules is very much concerning, from debate formats, accommodating Mr. Biden in Arizona this coming week, to letting this guy get in that didn't qualify, Mr. Bloomberg, to kicking other Democrats off the stage. It's an unlevel playing field with a thumb on it.
And Congressman Connor, you see it in the fall. Yes.
I was just going to jump in really quickly. I mean, I think the problem here is on the margins. It's one thing to lose a state like Michigan for Bernie Sanders. It's another thing to lose all 83 counties, which is what happened last night based on the numbers that have been reported so far. So I think that is what's going to be the most difficult thing. I mean, look at the county that, the county I map right now, and the county that has Flint in it, Joe Biden's carrying by 25. You just don't have one of the 82 that he's been able to win so far. So certainly I think Bernie Sanders should absolutely stay in the race. I think this next debate is going to be incredibly important. But I think Joe Biden now has a real electability argument just based on these results alone. The big question for me, as someone who fits into what the news media is calling young voters, which is everyone under 45, which means I get to fit as a young voter for a while now. I get a couple more decades. When looking at the numbers, young people in Missouri, for example, turned out far fewer numbers than they did in 2016, which is a problem. But this is also a problem for Joe Biden. And so I don't want to get caught in just saying like electorally and looking at the math and after the convention and things like that. Joe Biden, the one thing he has not proven how he's going to do yet is turn out young people, and you can't win the general election without that. So he's been able to demonstrate a lot of effectiveness in a lot of different states in terms of his electoral success, but unless he is able to rally young people behind him, as he's been able to rally older voters and suburban voters around him, I think that we are up for a huge and difficult challenge coming into this presidential election. And so that's what I'm curious to hear from the Biden camp. I don't just want them to be saying, look, we won, we're doing great. I want to really hear what is the plan to get these young people out, because it's the only block of voters right now that Bernie has is not just winning, but is winning by huge numbers.
Good point in terms of young voters. In Michigan, for example, only 5% of the young voters under 30 actually voted for Biden, and as the population grew, the numbers grew also. And you also made a good point about the counties. And there are 83 counties here, guys, and out of the 83, they say Biden has really locked down just about all of them. But guess what? In 2016, Sanders locked in and won exactly 73 of the 83 counties 4 years ago. So what happened between that Biden last night locked down all 83 basically based on the numbers, and 4 years ago Sanders locked in and won state of Michigan, and he got all 73. Now what is happening? The counties that Biden won this year were counties that really were white middle class workers. That was not the case. That Hillary did not capture them the 4 years ago. So the difference between 4 years ago and this year is that Biden not only captured African Americans here in Wayne County, which is Detroit, Michigan, but also Macomb County, Oakland County, where you had working class whites, and took all 83 based on the numbers.
You know what? We're talking numbers, and we want to deal with the facts here, but let me bring on it. I just want to hear from a couple of callers, because I want Congressman Khanna and Jonathan Jackson, since they are both involved in the Sanders campaign, to take this information, and you, Livonia Perryman, because of your interaction with the DNC, take some of these comments back to them. Let me go to Chaparral. What's on your mind?
Hey, Santita, thank you so much for taking my call this morning. And I tell you, I've been in a battle all night with this vote blue no matter who, because I'm sticking to my beliefs. I mean, I can't see anything that Bernie speaks, that Biden speaks right now to my needs as a person who I need him to vote for me in issues that matter to me, which is health care, student loan debt, jobs, Green New Deal. He's not offering black people anything. And so last night, after the Michigan results came in, I said, black people, y'all want them? You got them. You can have them. Now you need to make him work for you. Give him something to fight for if this is what you want. I cannot see for the life of me why Biden is so electable and Bernie is not. When we peel back the layers about what they're fighting for and what they're actually offering black people, we see that we're more aligned with Bernie. And so for people, I just don't trust this process. I am one of these Americans who believe in conspiracy theories because I have seen them strip this nomination from him before. I am very clear that all the big states like California and Texas and in Michigan, there were voter irregularities. There were, in the black and brown community, they were lying all the way down the street. South Dakota was messed up. And you only have, I think, one polling place in Fargo. These are things that are preventing democracy from actually showing its face. And this is coming right now in the Democratic primary. So this is telling me that the DNC has done everything to prevent this progressive agenda from coming. And the thing is that people are saying vote blue no matter who, but what are we getting? We're getting a moderate right Democrat who votes Republican. So tell me, why am I, a progressive, going to benefit from a Biden election? And so everybody's been telling me, oh, Chaparral, you have to vote for Biden. You can't do that. You're going to let Trump win. Guess what? I'm telling Mr. Biden, if he wants to win, because he's not going to bring in the 30% that Biden has. It's not, that Bernie has. It's not coming. The young people are not coming. They are not interested. The young people are woke. I don't know what's going on with the sleepy folks, with Sleepy Joe, but they can stay right where they're at because he's not unless he actually does a voter registration, a massive voter registration. He is not going to win. And everybody's talking about, well, maybe he can give Bernie as his VP. That's not going to happen. Maybe he can get a black person as his VP. That's not going to happen because I'm not interested even in a moderate VP. I want someone who's actually going to fight for the least of them. And so when I think about what's going on in this election and Representative Connor, take it back to Bernie. Take it to the street. Take it to the street because the hood is still with him. And I just think that the messaging is not getting across because it's been so muddled. When you have the media 24 hours telling you that Sanders can't win, when you have the DNC 24 hours saying Sanders can't win, people say, well, maybe he can't. But he has to, when he gets to that stage, he needs to lay out that agenda in a way that it resonates with regular people. And one last thing before I go, Santita, Reverend Jackson said, well, Bernie's health care plan is going to cost $40 million. We spending $4 trillion a year over 10 years. That's $40 trillion. And so it makes it seem as that it's less scary. He has to make his policies less scary for the average American. And we have to get it out there. But I'm still going to vote for Bernie. I'm still going to write him in, even if he don't get the nomination. Biden can go to hell. Have a good day.
Okay. Well, Congressman Connor, you heard from a voter here in Chicago. I just want you to respond to really the messaging because I'm hearing that from a lot of people. Messaging. How can we tighten that up?
Well, first of all, I think we have to respect the passion and the anger out in the election about what is going on. I mean, I heard people on CNN last night saying that this is the most remarkable win of Joe Biden and the closest, quickest to someone who's won the nomination, and we need to respect that. And I think that's not going to be a strategy that speaks to the voter who just called in. I mean, she's wondering, what are you going to do about my student loan? What are you going to do about the fact that it costs at least, you need to make at least $22 an hour to be able to afford to live and raise one child if you have one kid, and no one is talking about a livable wage that's at Bernie Sanders. What are you going to do in terms of making sure that I can have child care for my kids? I mean, these are real issues. People are struggling out there. And I think the question is if whoever the nominee is going to have to adjust their platform, their messaging, and adopt some policies that are actually going to help people if they want to win the general election. And I think at Sanders' point, we need to do a better job of getting it out that really what we're talking about is just completing the New Deal, completing what Jesse Jackson's trying, helping people. It's making sure you have enough money to afford to get a house and to have a decent standard of living and to take care of your kids. I mean, that's the message.
Well, I mean, and when you hear her passion, that's the kind of passion that drives tens of thousands of people or thousands upon thousands out to these Sanders rallies. So there's something that's not. Jonathan Jackson made the point about these open primaries versus the closed primaries. And I think that that's something that the surrogates, when you're on television, when you're on radio, when you're before a crowd, you need to make that point. Because the first caller we got today, Renee, said, I'm depressed. I don't know how many times she said that in the course of like 2 or 3 minutes on there. She just kept saying, I'm depressed. And she's still going to vote for Bernie, but she's depressed. And that means you could also have a depressed vote. Because you got the media, you know?
I think
But it also means that we can have Trump back there too.
Yeah, before we get to Trump, because we gotta get to Milwaukee. You know what I mean? I'm not worried about Trump right now. I'm worried about Milwaukee. Because I was worried about Atlanta in 1988. I knew when the Democrats disrespected Reverend Jackson and did not put him on the ticket, there was going to be a problem coming out of Atlanta, and it was. Reverend had to spend as much time not just registering voters, but getting his people back on board to vote for Dukakis. You remember that, Frank Watkins, Jonathan Jackson. You remember that when people, because Bernie represents people, and people, he's carrying their hopes and dreams.
Yeah,
Okay,
I want to.
Iowa.
The question once again is how do we translate the thousands who are, have passion for Sanders? I see it, I hear it, I feel it. How do we translate that to votes? I mean, we heard people say, I'm going to go out and vote. It didn't happen yesterday.
That's what they're telling. I'm just gonna step out here. Something is not lining up for me, because people don't get out here and get this passionate, and then they don't vote. Something.
It's not connecting. It's not connecting.
But like, why would you go out and vote if everything in the media is telling you your vote doesn't count? Why would you go out and vote if Senator Clyburn says throw in the towel? We don't need any more debates and primaries. We've already spoken. Why would you go out and vote when you've got people that are paid, that have endorsed other people, commentaries saying that you can't win? So every time you win, therefore, it's a surprise. Young people, blame themselves, and they're beginning to have a guilt complex because they've been told that they're wrong. I mean, look at Cargill says, let's wrap it up. Let's throw in the towel. New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Wisconsin, all these places have not voted. One point I want to make is that Iowa was a closed Democratic primary state. New Hampshire is like a modified primary. There's some rules and caveats under which you win there. Nevada, only Democrats can vote in their caucus, in their primary. That's not true of South Carolina and Michigan and Mississippi. These places are open primary. People need to understand that Republicans can vote in Democratic primary. The number one radio format in America that targets the African American community is comedy. The number one radio format that focuses on the Caucasian community is talk. So it's very rare that we're on a talk progressive channel where we can get information out. Trump is communicating with his base every day on talk radio and telling them what to do. They're participating in our primaries. Michigan last 4 years had 1.17 million votes in their primary. This year is 1.4 million. So if Bernie did not excite the electorate and his crowd did not come in, where are these votes coming from? As I shared with you with South Carolina, that we had 368,000 4 years ago. Now there's 538,000, and Trump is in South Carolina telling people to go vote for Democrats.
Oh, you know what? Hold on. I got about 2 minutes left in the show. Of course, we'll be on Facebook Live on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I know some of you are going to have to go, but Congressman Khanna, the last 2 minutes, I want you to have them before you go vote.
Well, to echo your point about 1988, one of the lessons should have been that the only plan that and obviously you, Mr. Jackson, know this, the only plan that the Democratic Party adopted was Reverend Jackson's anti-apartheid flag. But they totally ignored what he was talking about investing in public education, about expanding Pell Grants, about getting people health care, about cutting defense spending. So we ran on the same old, and we got the result that anyone could have predicted. And we would make a colossal mistake in 2020. Forget the candidates. Obviously, I want Bernie Sanders as nominee. But it's not just about him. It's about the ideas he represents and the people he's fighting for. And if the party brushes that off again, then we're not giving them a reason to come out, and that's what we're hearing from your callers.
So the path forward, Congressman Khanna, Senator Sanders is going to run on. He's not going to heed the calls of the party establishment to fold up the tent and not campaign anymore. Got a minute.
He can't. Your campaign is being funded for workers at Amazon, public school teachers, workers at Walmart, and the hopes of people who are giving their savings in $5, $10 contributions to your campaign. When their hopes are riding on you, you have to fight with everything you have for the policies that are going to make a difference in their lives. And the senator is going to make a clear contrast, not just with Joe Biden, but with two different visions of the Democratic Party. A Democratic Party that is actually going to fight for people who have been left out in this economy and who are struggling just to make ends meet at a time of extreme economic uncertainty, versus just going back to the status quo, which has not been working for millions of people. And I think that contrast is going to be very, very clear and loud in the debate. And we've seen these debates can be momentum changers.
All right, everybody. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Talk 1017 FM up in Milwaukee. Talk 92.7 in Madison. WCPT 820, the Santita Jackson Show coming out of Chicago. See you tomorrow. who in his lifetime he could not vote. I just think to deny people their choice, that is not a good thing. And it leaves a bad taste in the mouths because I'm talking to these young people every day. I've got two young interns. We work with Trevor Gervais. I mean, these are people who are under 25 who are shrugging their shoulders and they're saying, "You got to be kidding me! You can't you can't shut the process down. I haven't even voted yet." I mean, right, Mateo?
Conversation is that one, we're giving them an opportunity to vote, and they're not voting. That's what I mean, that's the backstory. The backstory is that one, we have these primaries, we have caucuses, and they come out in droves in terms of the rallies, and they're motivated, but they don't show up. Young people I'm speaking of, they don't show up in terms of the vote. So the party is saying it's about money and votes, and we have to win in November. So then we need to figure out where are the votes. The votes are with those over 40, and that's where they're going. That you can see it happening.
But you can also see these closed primaries, the difference, the widely diverging voting patterns that come out of these closed and open primaries. When they're open, I mean, and it's not just about Bernie Sanders, quite frankly. This is about another party coming in and subverting this process, and because you're watching the president come in and troll. I feel like we're being gamed here. Lavonia Perryman. Talking with Lavonia Perryman of 910 AM Superstation out of Detroit from 7 to 9 Eastern Time every night. She's giving you some of the best talk in the nation. Jonathan Jackson, national spokesman for Rainbow Push, who's also been been a surrogate for the Sanders campaign. Jonathan, were you about to jump in, or Miss Perryman, were you about to say something?
We're being gamed. You're absolutely right. It's almost like we're on a basketball team, and everyone is not playing their position. And then all of a sudden, we got some people who've already walk-ons. They're walking onto the game, and they're changing the game plan. And there's no way we can win. As progressives, regardless of name, regardless of Biden, regardless of Sanders, the party, the people, at the end of the day, will lose if we continue down this road of not allowing and opening up the process, not understanding the game plan, and allowing people to take our democratic process away. I think it's insulting.
Jonathan?
Oh, and I would like to add to that. I find it rather curious and a bit painful to watch all this talk of asking Mr. Sanders to throw in the towel, stop campaigning, to stop delivering hope. He's touching young people that either someone's going to lead them towards hope or Mr. Trump is going to fuel their hatred. We're going to see, and there's a divergent path here, and I don't think, and we can agree that Mr. Biden does not touch that demographic. We also know that voter suppression has kicked in. What is the consequences for voter suppression around young people? I don't know. I'm not in that demographic on how hard it may be for them to vote. But I do know, as you see in El Paso and around Dallas, and there's a recount going around the Dallas area. Apparently they found some other votes or something. We're still a week or two away from California getting votes counted, just some huge irregularities, is that the Democratic Party and the party leadership is not willing to fight for black and brown votes that are being suppressed right now. When the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, says he wasn't on the roll where he's been going to the polling place for 11 years. Why isn't that the headline as opposed to asking someone to drop out with more than 50% of the electorate still has not voted? Florida's not voted. New York State, Pennsylvania, Illinois. The big states have still not even voted. I don't think they're fighting for the least of these. And we saw Mrs. Clinton had the most votes, but because of voter suppression, did not have the most electoral college votes. Unless they're willing to start fighting for every vote to count, I think we're in big trouble.
Let me bring on a couple of these.
Oh,
Right, I think our strategy is the Democratic strategy. I keep saying the vote. We need the Democrats need to be like pit bulls. We need to take a bite out of this. And I mean, we are up against a cruel and inhumane individual who is running the Republican Party. We need to look at what we're dealing with, and then we also, as a party, the Democratic Party, if it is not the voice of Biden or Sanders, that there needs to be someone who's speaking to the young adults and saying, this is where we need to go. We need your vote. I mean, we can talk about it and who's on first and who's on second, but we need to address them where they are, and we need to move the needle. If we don't move the needle, not just young people lose, everybody loses.
Let me go to you, Roosevelt. What's on your mind?
Good morning, everybody. Here's my analysis. First of all, my candidate is gone. Okay? Elizabeth Warren, this is the way I called it on your show, Santita. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and then Joe Biden. My candidate is gone. Okay? So now I'm going with Bernie Sanders. However, here's my analysis. Bernie Sanders went down as soon as Jim Clyburn supported Biden. Along with that, coupled with that, the South, Biden ran the South on the Afro-American vote. They voted for him in droves. Bernie was supported by the Latino vote, the Hispanic vote. Right. Prior to that, 2016, if I remember correctly, I could be mistaken if somebody could correct me, I believe Hillary Clinton said,
no, thank you. I would like a bacon and cheese bagel sandwich with no breakfast sauce and a...
Ron, we can hear you, sweetie. Go on and get that bagel. But what were you saying, Roosevelt?
Yes, I believe in 2016, Hillary Clinton carried the Latino vote. So Bernie had a uphill battle with the Latino community, and he conquered that. He got Chuy Garcia to support him, and he got Ocasio-Cortez to support him. And that's where I'm going, Santita. The support and the backing of Biden overwhelmed Bernie's supporters. Who did Biden get? He got the gentleman from Texas. What's his name? I can't. Yeah.
Beto, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, but they had to leave out because I don't know how big their constituencies are because they couldn't get above single digits in the polls.
Right, but their support, people, this is my analysis. African American people think, well, if Biden has got the support of Harris and the gentleman from, you mentioned him, from Boston, from Massachusetts, Cory Booker, and don't forget, Biden also got the support of the governor of California, and that's big. Look at all the Latinos that are over there.
Yeah, but when you're looking at Cory Booker, who I like a lot, Kamala Harris, who I like a lot, they didn't get black support when they were running. They didn't. So.
I'm not saying them. I'm saying that they supported Biden. In other words, this is just my analysis. So I believe the African American community is thinking, well, if Harris and Cory Booker supported Biden, that means that they're going to have a spot in Biden's cabinet.
Well, hold on. You know what? Let me stay right there. Don't leave. Jonathan, I heard you trying to jump in. Because, I mean, let's let some African Americans talk about what they're hearing in the black community. Stay right there. Because we're all hearing a lot of things, and I think we just need to have this conversation. Jonathan, Livonia, were you going to say something?
Yes, I was going to say Harris and Cory Booker, who are like family to all of us on this phone, on this show, they did not drive the African American vote. They just did not. They didn't do it in 2019, 2020. Even when they have a discussion about should Harris be the vice president, the answer right now in our community, I'm going to just give it to you as I'm hearing it, no. because it wouldn't add value to the ticket. Now that's what's being heard on the ground. So I'm saying that I don't know if that is added value to Biden. What I think it just neutralizes everyone else so he can move on.
Okay, Jonathan.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Hey, I think we have to open it up so that young people can come in. And what is the party doing to bring in young people?
Yes.
How is the party fighting for young people's voter rights? The young people have been abandoned and being told that they're petulant, that they're petty, that the adults are in the room. It's time for you to leave. These persons, 18, are grown people, and it bothers me that this is their first experience with the party. It's not very welcoming. So I pray we can turn that around. But encourage the race. We said that there would be 50-state race. Everyone should be encouraged to run all 50 states. What is the problem with that?
The problem is the party is saying it's the fear of us giving negative information to the other side, that we don't appear to be unified, that we need to look like we're coming together so we can overcome and so we can win in November. I agree with you. The party needs to speak to or have folks speak to and with the young adults. But the fear, I think, is fear of losing in November is causing all the havoc right now in March.
But you know what, Lavonia, I think what the party's asking us to do is to marry first and date later. That does not work. You need to get to know someone so that we don't have a divorce. I mean, of course that can always happen, but I'm just saying, oh, unify, unify. I don't, because I mean, Joe Biden will not commit to Medicare for all. He, I mean, he won't answer my questions about desegregation and his role in in gutting busing, and then Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas and the crime bill and wanting to be known as the crime senator. I mean, all this stuff, before, because people need to know. Before I marry you, I need to get to know you. You don't need to tell me. That's a TV show. 90 Day Fiance, where I'm going to say I'm going to marry you. I've met you. Okay, yeah, because I just don't want to be alone. Whoa, that doesn't work like that. That's crazy.
Not only the candidate, be they Sanders or Biden, but the party needs to, like you said, Jonathan, they need to talk and share. Where are we on the issues as it relates to young folks, to seniors, healthcare, all of those issues? We have yet to hear. All I'm hearing, not all I'm hearing, well, what I'm hearing is that, one, we need to come together right now. It's fear of not winning. We need to beat Trump. And I agree with all of that now, just so you know. But it's almost like you're saying, Santita, that one, we're going to get married, and then we'll talk about the platform, the issues, and we'll take care of health care, November the 4th, instead of November the 3rd when the election day is.
Well, Jonathan, I think you're running out of here. What do you want to say? What's your closing thought?
Oh, well, that analogy that you said is like so rich. You want to catch me at a bar to give you my full thoughts on that. I love you more in the morning than I do tonight. There's a whole thinking that goes with that. It doesn't get better. So, hey, let's fight the good fight. Stay encouraged and keep the fight up. Okay, bye-bye.
You know what, everybody? I don't know if you all got this. This is my brother. I mean, my brother, like blood brother for real. Like mom and dad had me, Jesse, Johnny, Yusuf, and Jackie, and so of course, she's like really Aunt Lavonia. So I just have to be, fully disclosed. But hey, that's what I feel like I'm being told, Lavonia. But let me bring on Ron from Ron from Naperville. Do you have your bagel, Ron?
I do. I choked it down.
Don't choke it down.
Because I'm like fighting something and choking on it.
I mean, a bacon bagel. I was like, now this is something I've not heard before. What? Who does that?
McDonald's bacon, egg, and cheese. McDonald's bacon, egg, and cheese.
Only in Oakland, California.
He's coming up with something new. What's on your mind, Ron?
Okay, so first of all, your statement, but you almost made me choke to death while driving when you said, marry me now and we'll date later. You really wanted to say something else. Make a baby. Let me make a baby with you now, and then we'll talk about whether or not we want to hang out.
No, no, no. That's too much because I can't. That's a little bit too much. I meant what I said. Marry me now, date me later.
Put words in your mouth. I'm putting words in my mouth. Then,
Okay.
because that's unfortunately we have a lot of things that are not going to make skeptical young people excited about voting in anything. We have electoral college, which to anyone who is younger than younger than 50 probably start think that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then we've got super delegates for the Democratic Party. No, not for the the Republican Party, but for the Democratic Party. Super delegates? Oh, people who are cooler than normal people who get bigger votes. Sounds like democracy and Democratic Party to me. On top of it, we have open primaries where the Republicans can run for, they can go in and vote for Democratic candidates. Wait, what happened to the Republican Party primary where the Democrats could go spoil the race? Oh, they canceled it. So all those Republicans have nothing better to do than to goof around on a primary day because, hey, wouldn't this make the libtards happy if we screwed with their whole process? Because it's already flawed to the nth degree. So here's the story. If Bernie and Biden, or Bernie and Joe wanted to make it right, they'd kind of go behind a closed door, drink a few beers, and say, okay, where's the ticket? Ha ha! Try that one on for size. Because that's basically the same thing I was preaching. Get Warren on as VP and be done and crush the enemy.
But you know what? I don't want. You know why I don't want that, Ron? I want a fight to the finish. Then when we get to the convention, we find out. Then you know what? Then we can decide who the VP is going to be. But I don't want you running as a ticket in the primary. That's for the fall. Right now, I want to hear where you stand on Medicare for all. I want to know where you stand on school desegregation and equal high quality funding to equal high quality public schools. I need to know that at a time when the Brown v. Board of Education is being subverted. We have a more segregated system, a more unequal education system than at any time that we've had since Brown v. Board of Education, Livonia. I mean, look, Brown v. Board of Education was an economic decision as much as it was a social decision. This was not just about having white kids and black kids sit together. No, black parents said, my money, my tax dollars, I'm paying the same dollars that white parents are paying, but their schools have new books. Their schools are new buildings. This is no, no. I want my money. I want things. I want my school to look like your school. I mean, and I want to have, because at that time black teachers could not get hired, so we actually had black teachers who were coming out of the HBCUs at top. You know that's your background, Livonia, and you had Harvard trained and Ivy League trained professors who were teaching in high schools and grammar schools because they could not get jobs in colleges and universities. So I'm just saying, I just think that right now we need to cool our jets. I'm not frightened of Trump, and I'm going to tell you, I keep telling you why. I'm a black person whose family survived Jim Crow and slavery and Reconstruction and on and on and on. We have dealt with awful things before. At least I know what I'm dealing with. I am like, I'm looking at people who are smiling at me and who are giving me no deliverables. Oh, don't tell me you know me. Um, I, I don't know you, but you know me. No, and knowing me, that's another problem too, because people take you for granted when they've been a little too close too soon, Livonia. you know, you know what I'm saying? Come on, all these dating analogies I'm coming up with right here. But you know what I'm saying? This is ridiculous. I'm saying there's time before July to find out where people stand. And you know, when people feel that they have been heard, I think that Bernie Sanders people and Biden's people can live with it, can live with the result when they feel that the process has been fair and open. When it's not been fair and open, when you game the system, when the establishment comes in and you force these people out, because Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg didn't look like they were trying to go anywhere anytime soon. Suddenly they're out, and I'm going to support you, and you close down the process. And I've had more of these young people say to me, I feel like this is being stolen. I'm hearing it from the young people. And we cannot afford that if you want another result in the fall, Livonia. you know, if
I agree. And the thing about it, it feels that way, and it is that way because once again, I just believe it's the process, and money drives a lot. Listen, watch what is happening. They're saying, well, we need to make sure we got the money right behind the candidate. Well, they may not name that candidate to us, but the media is trying to name that candidate. And we must remember that the media, it is part of this whole process. I learned one thing for sure: is message and the messenger. I learned that from Reverend Jesse Jackson, how important it is. And when you have the messenger who does not look like us, talk like us, and is controlling the message on the airwaves, I mean, we're one of the only 2 or 3 urban or radio stations that has conversations for hours that talk to people who are black, who are progressive. And that is a problem across the country. It's not a mistake. It's not a mistake when you can get up in the morning at 6 a.m. and then you go to bed at 12 midnight and it's the same message on the networks. It's almost as if everybody got the same script, regardless of who they are, regardless if they say they're progressive or they're conservative. It sounds the same. There is controls built in to the messaging. And the messaging is like, let's get on with the business at hand. Let's identify a candidate. Let's get behind that candidate. And let's put the $1 billion behind that person and let's move on. That is really the message that's going down. We love the young folk, but we're going to get them the next time around. But right now, we're on another planet and another plan. That is the message. And everybody, not everybody, most folk are playing a role. The media, the party leadership, elected officials, be they black or white.
and I'm saying that's not a winning proposition, not just in the short term, which is 2020, long term, because you remember Dr. King said, and I read, the riots are the language of the unheard. We're seeing, maybe they're not throwing Molotov cocktails and such in the street, uh, but we are watching a quiet riot with our young people. Um, just because they're not voting doesn't mean they're not there. And I believe our young people are voting. I just saw something about this open primary, this closed primary. This is a mess, Livonia and Roosevelt. It's a mess. Now you know what? Close the primaries. If Democrats are going to vote, let them vote. There is a reason. These Republicans have absolutely studied and they've gamed the system. They have said, okay, in these closed primaries, President Trump is going there and he's saying, okay, everybody, get in and vote in the Democratic primary and let's throw this thing over. Because the person that he said he doesn't want to run against? He said he doesn't want to run against Bernie Sanders because you can't run against a movement. Because when voters had the option in 2016, they chose between him and Bernie Sanders because they both ran movements. They're both populists. Do I like President Trump's brand of populism? No, I do not. But I'm just looking at this. I'm trying to look at this scientifically. I mean, I'm agnostic about the parties. I just want to look at the process here, and that's what I'm seeing. And I think we need to be very honest about the fact that we ignored Julian Castro when he said, what, there is a race wealth gap, not just in the American public, but in this campaign process. Because Kamala Harris was at the bottom of the top. That is, she was the biggest fundraiser black, black candidate, person of color, but she also was at the bottom of the top tier. She couldn't go anywhere. She's trying to run for reelection as a senator. She needs to be strengthened in California because she has her vulnerabilities. We all do. And no one listened to Julian Castro, who he's the one who put out so many of these progressive ideas as he talked about the race gap, the wealth gap, the race wealth gap with the candidates. He talked about that, which is why publicly funding campaigns comes into play. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that we need to discuss, but shutting everything down, allowing Bloomberg to jump into the race, I mean, come on. Come on.
Jump into the race as anyone will, if you read anything today or yesterday or today, that Bloomberg is putting up money for the candidate. Now remember, I'm not saying it's Sanders or Biden, but his money is he has already said, I'm willing to put money up for the staffing of the Democratic candidate. Well, we know it's not him. We know that. And so what does that mean? That the deal has already been cut? That the agreement has already been made, that he got in his money and he gave money to the campaign or the party, and now the party is saying, yes, we still accept your money and it should go to Biden? Is that what the conversation is right now? It feels that way, Santita. It feels that way. It just does.
And people feel some kind of way about that, and they don't like it. And I'm just trying to be a messenger here and let you know what I'm hearing. And now, I mean, because, just because there's black people helping to run the party, that doesn't make me feel any better because black people are not all progressive at all. In fact, we are very, very conservative. We would like to maintain the status quo. We just want to have more doors open so we can get in it. And I'm saying, that was not Dr. King's point. Dr. King said, no, we need to change this system because the system itself, in and of itself, for black, white, brown, yellow, and red is unfair. Many of us, black people, do not feel that way. We feel that it's unfair, but as long as you get things right so I can get in it, some of us are feeling that way, and I think that's wrong. I do.
I said it, I'm going to say it again. It is the process that got us where we are today. Today, because of rules that are determined by a group of people, and not saying that right or wrong, and the leadership, whoever in the party, decided that we're going to have open primaries. Someone had to decide and vote on that. They did. Now here we are bearing the pain of that decision. That decision is having impact on what is happening today, not just for young people, but for the party, for progressives, for people who want to be inclusive in terms of elections, not just 2020, but on down the line. If we are having a discussion today that says that Republicans can just walk into a room and determine who is going to be on the Democratic ticket, that's a problem. That's a problem, and that's process.
And we're going to have to do something because you got to get through Milwaukee to get to the fall. You can't just jump there. We can't just skip ahead. Life doesn't work that way. You have to live every day, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Roosevelt, your final thought.
My final thought is this. Bernie was ahead until he got to Super Tuesday. The endorsement, and I was hoping that you ladies would answer my question. The endorsement of Jim Clyburn carried a lot of weight, and that made Biden change the momentum down south, to be specific, the African American vote. And I was almost shocked that Bernie Sanders had a close election in California and Texas, because I thought Bernie was going to wallop Biden, because Bernie is carrying the Latino vote.
He was going to. He was going to wallop him. But what happened was the mainstream. They just hold on because this was already out there. The Democratic establishment had Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg drop out. The fear was that he was not going to reach the 15% threshold in many, if in most districts across California. By having them drop out, he was able to reach the 15% threshold, which enables you to get delegates. Now, you didn't pose a question formally. What is the question that you have about is what?
Is this. My question is this. Jim Clyburn changed this primary. He changed the momentum,
Okay.
and African American people listened to him over the age of 45, and they're all voting for him. And after that, Biden got the endorsement again, Harris and the gentleman from Boston,
No,
and
not from Boston, from New Jersey.
from New Jersey, I'm sorry, Cory Booker. So, and on the other side, I believe the endorsements count a lot. You had, on the other side, you had Bernie endorsed by Castro and your father, Reverend Jackson, and also Ocasio-Cortez. Where are the rest of the African American leaders that are supporting Bernie Sanders? I believe that that's where everything changed with Jim Clyburn.
Well, I mean, I think that you're right. There's no question that Mr. Clyburn had a tremendous amount of weight in South Carolina, but also we have to go to the information that we were given about closed and open primaries. You cannot discount President Trump's impact upon this process. Jonathan's analysis, Livonia, was the first I've heard of any pundit really putting that out there and saying, wait a minute. Because we just see the media saying, oh, President Trump is coming in, as if he's coming in to play tiddlywinks and have a good time. He is coming in, he is registering voters, and he is upending the process because he is not having these meetings, these camp meetings, if you will, in states where they have closed primaries because he can't move the needle there. But when the primary is open, he can move the needle, and that is exactly where he has been going, Livonia.
Absolutely, no question about it. And that comes from the party leadership making that decision 4 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. And here we are dealing with that situation. We got to live with it right now, and we need to understand that. So our strategy within the Democratic Party has to acknowledge that and figure out how do we counteract that. That is voter suppression. That was just one element. That was one example. And Jonathan was right on the point. If nothing else, I am going to be preaching that today so people understand that. And what I keep saying, Trump he is having these rallies. They're not, and they're strategically like planned. They're done constantly. No president in our lifetime, Santita, in our lifetime has gotten up every week to have a rally as he was running, as he is sitting in the White House.
But you're right. But what he's also doing, he is following see, because it's not just him. We have had David Daley, who wrote the book Rat F. You got to have him on, Livonia, if you've not had him before. And it is a true story, Rat Effed, the true story of the secret plan to steal our democracy. And this was the three of the biggest players in Republican politics who sat down in the immediate aftermath of the Obama victory in 2008. And they said he can have the presidency, but what we're going to do is take the U.S. Congress, both houses, take the state legislatures, both houses, take the governorships. That's what we're going to do. And that is how we lost 1,000 plus seats beyond us taking our eye off the balls, right? And so I'm saying there has been a plan that these people, what do they say? Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. That's so true. I mean, so what they've been doing is planning. And if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Democrats have been failing to plan. These Republicans have been planning. I mean, don't think that Trump is just spontaneous. Okay, let me put it this way. I think, and you know what, you won't really get this, Roosevelt, but I think even though she doesn't really need makeup, and I do, Livonia Perryman will get this. You know how you have to, when you take pictures, you got to put on a whole lot of makeup to look natural, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's what we're seeing with President Trump. He looks like he's being spontaneous. And you know what? It's just like Reverend Jackson giving a speech. He's extemporaneous. He is spontaneous, but he is also very studied.
Mm-hmm.
And wait a minute, and study the opponent. And it's almost, once again, it's like a game of sport.
Yeah.
This is truly a game. They have a playbook. The Republicans have a playbook, and you need to understand that the playbook is, and they're carrying it out, and everybody's in sync. They're not off the reservation. Everyone gets up in the morning and looks at that playbook based on what comes out of the White House, and they roll with it. No, I wouldn't care. The person who was in the factory in Michigan yesterday who talked about gun control in front of Biden, I said it on the air. Part of that was a strategy. He was here to have a discussion to put Biden on Front Street. That was not by accident. That question was not by accident. That person was not there by accident. Part of the strategy. I'm telling you, it's right, Santita.
Look, I'm just saying that they're very, very studied. They know what they're doing. And so when you talk about that, even that's why I was saying, yes, you asked about Clyburn, and we gave you the answer. Yes, he had no, just no. That's we're about to shut this down now. This is going to be not democratic very because no, because you asked for one question and we gave it to you. This has been a plan, okay? And what people need to do, because my first call today, I'm going to let Lavonia make your final statement. Someone, Renee, called in and said she was depressed.
Yes.
We cannot afford, and wait a minute, we saw this with Reverend in 84 and particularly in 88 when he got so close. And so Reverend would always help to lift us up and say, no, we're winning every day. That's what has to happen because we're winning every day. Now Medicare for all is part of the just general conversation in the Democratic Party. Thank you, thank you, Bernie Sanders. Thank you for that. I mean, there's some things that are now just part of the conversation that were not part of the conversation before. We're winning every day. And what you need to do is, hey, mainstream media, that's why you need to listen to Lavonia Perryman, 7 to 9 Eastern Time. How do we listen to you? Because I want you to tell us how we can listen to you because you need to know that there are people, we put you up on WCPT 820. We need to know where we can find the information. You need to hear, see, because we don't have Ebony and Jet anymore. And Jet was our weekly camp meeting, right? The thing is, we need to know that there is a path forward. We need to know that when you get to the convention, even though it is turned into a television show, Livonia, that is really where you're supposed to hammer out the issues, and we're supposed to fight and everything else. In '72, Reverend Jackson and Bill Singer, who was an alderman in Chicago, they were so fed up with the Democratic machine. There was a fight on the floor, the rules, just like Fannie Lou Hamer did in '64, and they unseated Mayor Daley in 1972. That's what conventions are for. And the party has tried to shut that down, and they've been successful. But I'm telling you, if they want to keep a Democratic Party, they're going to have to stop that. They're going to have to let this process be organic and let people say what they need to say, Livonia. Let them vote. And then when we get to Milwaukee, we can have it out. And there are many conventions before we even get to Milwaukee. You know that. You know this process better than anybody.
Right, there's a convention coming up for March 20th here, March 21st in Michigan. Your point is so well taken. It needs to be organic. It needs to be open. We need to study. We need to study the process. We need to understand how to speak to people, how to engage people. And we need to create a movement with the progressive. And don't use age as a limitation. Use it as an advantage. Do not speak as if we're talking about strangers at night, as when we talk about young adults. Those are our children. Those are our children. Those are our leaders. Those are, we need to speak to the younger folk in our lives as if they're part of our family and that we are all in this together. If they lose, we lose. And I want to say to the young folk, if they lose, the older folk lose too. So we don't have a choice but to be organic, be fair, and have an open process.
Amen to that. Because you know what? I think that given what we have experienced, the unfairness, black people should be at the front line on making sure that the process is open and fair. You can't become a party boss. I love Congressman Clyburn, but he shouldn't do that. He should not. He should be the last person to be calling for the end of the process, which is what the Republicans are doing. I mean, this is not about even Republicans or Democrats. This is about party. This is about power protecting itself, which it does. And this is not right. And you know what my mother said, Lavonia Perryman, who you have known for a long time. I remember her coming into the room when we were in San Francisco at the Democratic convention, and she said, "Flesh and blood did not reveal this to me, but I have to say this to you because you know our suite was an office." So people, there were like three or four types. You know, we roll. It was nothing luxurious about it, right?
It was an office.
It was an office, so you had us running around, five kids, and that's right, and our friends, and everybody was there. And my mother, in the midst of all of that controlled chaos, said, "You know, flesh and blood did not reveal this to me. She just come out of my she and Daddy's room." She said, "Flesh and blood didn't reveal this to me." She said, "But I'm here to tell you that God did not bring us here so that we could be as corrupt as the oppressor. We must go another way." Because of course you know this better than anyone because you were involved in the on the ground crew of the 84 and 88 campaigns. We didn't even expect Reverend to live through the campaign. As as we're watching, you know that as we're watching these uh, these 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 people jump on the stage with these Democratic candidates, I'm like, whoa, what is going on? But you know what? They don't get Secret Service protection until a certain point. I'm accustomed to you getting it the day that you announce because Reverend was so threatened that President Reagan had to sign a special dispensation to give him Secret Service protection the day that he announced because he was so threatened. We had the Fruit of Islam who literally started protecting him, and they were shadowing me. I was in school. They were shadowing my brother Jesse. He was in boarding school because people were trying to kill him. You know that. And so when she said that, I said, it stayed with me forever. That was, what, 36 years ago? She said, no, 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 no. God brought us here so that we could carve out a new path and do this a new way. Your final thought?
Challenge, and that is our responsibility. I keep telling people, regardless of age, regardless of young folks, older people, our responsibility is to vote. And you can, and we should not allow anyone to take that away from us. Our responsibility is to get up and get out there and get involved and do exactly what your mom said. Do what your dad 30 some years ago stood there in San Francisco on that stage and he gave us the marching orders. It has not changed. It has not changed. There's still about 10 more points in that speech that we need to address today. Today. So we cannot stop the process or eliminate the process because of fear that we might go up against someone like 45 who is going to throw all of the crap at us. You're right. We need to go through the process and go through it so we can get to Milwaukee and have that discussion and bring along the woman who is depressed. I want to alleviate that pain that she's feeling today. And the only way we can do that is say, we heard you, we hear you, and we hope to bring you along. Stick with us, and we're not going to let you go. Because we let her go, there's many of others who sound like her all over the country. I heard them in Michigan last night.
Okay.
Even when the numbers are coming out. Well, I don't know if this is rigged or not. I don't know if I'm a vote or not. I don't know. I don't think Sanders should speak or not. All of that does not fare well with me in terms of being progressive and being inclusive. So those weary people, we need to make sure that they hear the message that we heard to King, to Jackson, through Obama. All of that we need to hear, and other people too. I mean, there are others. This is not a time to give up. This is a time to step up and step out. It really is.
And it is, and the only way we can do that is to ensure that the process is fair and open, transparent. Then Renee, she can take a loss. But when you see the pile-on from the mainstream media, when you have all of these pundits who are affiliated with candidates, And they don't even reveal that. There's no full disclosure. I work for Hillary Clinton. Full disclosure. I am a DNC board member. I'm part of I'm part of the Democratic National Committee. It's their board of directors. Full disclosure. Wait a minute. When you don't do that, and it's happened so much, you lose the trust of the people. You lose their faith. And when that happens, you lose elections. Okay? Because
And I still hear it. I can hear it in my head right now. What is one of our favorite people says? We need to have an equal playing field. When the playing field is equal, then everybody can play the game, and whoever wins on that playing field is the winner.
he said, level it out.
Yeah.
So, because we can handle it. We can handle a loss. But when the playing field is not level, that's why we love sports, because you know what? On Serena's best day, she's the best. She's just the best. When you level it out, when you put Serena and Venus on that court, you just say, okay, Naomi, okay, I got it. Coco, yep, I got it. I got it. Look, Martina in her day, I got it. Whatever you wanted to say about these folks, Chris Everett, look, these folks were the best on that day on that court. I love it.
Right. And that's what we need to be today. And I think that's what people are looking for, Santita. They're looking for equal playing field. It doesn't feel like that right now for some folks. It just doesn't.
It doesn't feel that way like that for me. And that for me is problematic, because that was the first call, Livonia, that we got in today. When she said, I am depressed. That's why I said, no, that's why I called so many of you and convened like a camp meeting here today. Because I said, we got to have this talk and other people need to hear it. And we've got a lot of people who are looking on Facebook Live, and they stayed with us because they wanted to get a word. Everybody get out and vote. Get out and vote. This is not over. And you know what? We're going to put up, and I'm going to send it to you, Livonia, this graph. It's not a graph. It lets you know the states where you have to register as a Democrat to vote in the primaries. You need to see it. You need to see it because, you've got to, because let me tell you, when you see the closed primaries, California was open, Colorado open, Nebraska open, South Dakota open, but you know what was closed? New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, Kentucky, Louisiana, Florida, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., New York, Maine, Alaska. So you have a lot of mischief. You got a lot of mischief, a lot of it. And we have to be clear on what's happening here. When the president was when he was calling for Republicans to jump in, it was a call to action, everybody. He meant it. He was not joking. And they jumped in. I promise you, I believe they jumped in the primaries because the numbers are off. The numbers are off. And for the media not to say it, Livonia, is negligent. I mean, they are irresponsible. It's not negligent. They're being irresponsible.
Yeah, because when you look at the numbers, you look at the movement, you look at the number of people at the convention, at the rallies, you look at all of that going on, and it's organic. And then you look at the vote, and then you look at the numbers, and there's no match. I mean, you have 50,000 people at a rally, and you only have 5,000 people voting. Something is not right. The dots are not connecting. You're so right. You're so right. We have to look at that carefully, and people need to look at that when they're voting and understand. But you know what? It goes back to what Jonathan has encouraged us to do. You got to study the process.
That's right.
Look at and drill down and find out what is really happening, and pay attention to what is happening on both sides, regardless of the candidate. Got to look at the process. Really have to.
I love you, Livonia Perryman. How can we hear you?
You can hear me every day, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can go to www.910 10amsuperstation.com, and you can hear and see me anywhere in the world. If you're in the Detroit metropolitan area, you go to 910 AM on your AM dial. And if you are real, and you can go to Roku, you can go cable 35, you can stream me in any way you can. Short of me sending up a smoke signal, you can see and hear me. And just like you, they can call in from anywhere in the world, 313-778-7600, 778-7600. We're going to do a wrap-up tonight on the show from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to do a wrap-up, and I'm going to play Congressman Clyburn's statement that he gave me yesterday. I want people to hear it again. And I want, because I always say it's about education, it's about understanding, it's about transparency. You need to hear him, because I asked the question, why Biden? I asked him that question. And he, in his own words, if you listen tonight, he will tell you why Biden. That's just his opinion.
And it matters. And we need to hear from everybody. We really do. And put in a good word for me, because I'm going to get him on my show.
Make sure that Hope hears from me today. You'll be receiving a text, and I'm sure she'll be calling you. She's really good at it. His office is very good. You'll probably get a call within an hour after I do it.
Come on.
I love you, dear.
I love you. I love you. Can't wait to listen in tonight. The Lavonia Perryman Show, everybody. 9:10 a.m. Superstation.com, everybody. 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's 6 to 8 Chicago time, which is Central Time. Love you. God bless you.
Santina gets us up early morning, and I put you to bed. You can't beat that.
What?
That's right. From real people, real news. Thank you, love.
I love you. God bless you. All right, everybody. I am out of here. Thank you, Roosevelt, for always chiming in and just having so much to contribute. Love you. See you tomorrow morning here on the Santita Jackson Show. Lady B. Woo-hoo. Mateo. Woo-hoo. Gotta let you know the crew. I know Mateo does not want to be seen. He's one of the, I can tell. He's like, please get me off camera, like right now. I know, I can tell. I was, it just hit me. Otherwise, but I want people to know who you are, that you're here.
Thank you.
I'll just do it for a hot second. I know, but he does not want to be bothered with that at all. See you tomorrow. Love you.